we're discussing this morning the subject is psychism and its various forms, and this morning we've been focusing on the crystal, and earlier we talked a little bit about the crystal and I gave some interpretation. So give me your feedback on what I've been saying.
Well, when I turned 18, that's when I started getting these flashbacks of a life on Atlantis, where I know I've been on Atlantis because I had some flashbacks. And the only thing I remember what the land looked like. It was sort of a desert area, the section of Atlantis I was from. But what I specifically remember about Atlantis is the vehicles that the humans drove were anti-gravity. And I could see the vehicle, and it looked like from the Jetsons. There was a cartoon called The Jetsons where they drove these vehicles in space.
Yeah.
And they looked like what I saw with my flashback was that the vehicle looked like from the Jetsons, and it hovered about 1 foot above the ground, and I knew it was anti-gravity. Like, that's how it was propelled. And I also feel like what I remember about Atlantis was that the color of the clothing you wore was symbolic of your soul's evolution, like how advanced you were, your consciousness, like you said.
You've got this fascinating looking book from Roosevelt something or other.
Roosevelt High School.
And I don't know anything about it, but we should start talking about this and see where that leads us. You have a story attached to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm 40 years old, and the year was 1986, and I was a senior at Roosevelt High School in Des Moines, Iowa. And I had this dream that I was sitting in a coffee shop, and I was enjoying a cup of coffee, and there was a boy, and this was in the dream, that was eager to communicate with me. He was watching me through the window, he was following me around, and he was attempting communication, but I got the impression that he didn't speak English. He only used telepathy. And he didn't speak with his lips, he just used telepathy, and he was very eager to communicate with me. And he caught up with me after I tried to avoid him because I was a little scared. And he caught up with me, and he handed me a piece of paper, and on the piece of paper it was a language that I'd never seen before. It was a language that looked like the Greek alphabet or Egyptian hieroglyphics. It was like triangles and circles and straight lines, and it was a geometrical language of symbols.
Okay.
The boy attempted communication to me in a dream, and it was an extremely vivid dream. And then within about 60 days after the dream, I was an office helper to the principal. I answered the switchboard for 30 minutes on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And as a result, I was walking the hallways alone, and the hallways were dark. Let me show you what the high school looks like. It's a very old high school. My father graduated from there. My friend's grandmother graduated from there. It's known to have ghosts in this high school. It's really creepy and dark. The hallways are dark. And I was walking the hallways on my way to help the office, and this boy appeared in the crossing of the hallways. And this was the boy right here. And I knew immediately, I was shocked that I knew this was the boy from the dream that was attempting communication. See if you can see that.
Now, the point is this.
This is the boy.
He gave you a piece of paper with indecipherable
Yes, he did.
hieroglyphics or whatever you want to call
Right.
them. Now, the point about that is, the first thing I would say that's very clear is that was a massive precognitive event.
Yeah.
Because you dreamed, it came true.
Yeah.
Most people do not recall the dream, and when it happens, they get sometimes a deja vu-like feeling. But if you have a clear dream and then it happens, it is precognitive, and you don't have to think of deja vu because you have recalled it. The question is, number one, what was he doing, and what was he trying to communicate to you?
Right.
I believe from what I've picked up here that he was somebody that spent a lot of his time in emotional terms in almost like in another world, another dimension. I do not think he focused here to a great extent, and I think he was directed to do this.
Right, he was directed to contact
Yes,
me,
directed,
and I know that.
And I don't believe
I
that
could tell by his,
yeah.
he was so eager to contact me, and I was scared, and in the dream I avoided him. I was trying to avoid him in the dream, and then when he showed up in real life, I ran. I mean, he was so odd. The situation was
Yeah.
so odd,
Well,
and I knew immediately that he was not one of us. He didn't communicate like humans.
He was
using telepathy.
No, he was actually human, but a lot of his consciousness had been taken over and was being manipulated.
Okay. I understand now.
And so to that extent, he really wasn't like a normal male teenage kid. And he had he formed an attachment to you before this happened, and then he was directed to give you this information, which he didn't have a clue about.
I see.
He didn't
even know what it was.
No, he could not give you 2 cents worth of interpretation.
Okay.
It's like I have a thing about 11/11, for example.
Right.
I have no idea where I even started it.
So I have that same problem. Every time I look at the clock, it's 11:11.
I have that problem too,
and
every time
every day,
yeah.
every day I look at the clock and it's 11:11.
11/11.
I'm having that same problem. But you know what? I didn't start having that problem until I viewed the Crystal Links website. The Crystal Links, Ellie Crystal, it's a special psychic website that was talking about 11:11, and I was like, what is this? And then after I read about this on the website, every time I look at a clock, it's 11:11.
As usual, you know, what can you do? Exploring the Unknown goes like that.
Yeah,
and,
that was a fun show.
It's
I
been
enjoyed
really
it.
interesting, and these things are great guidelines to where you're going in your future.